The Nets are hoping for a title this season. Another team that's hoping for a title that might have gotten their championship aspiration hopes up a little bit this past week are the Los Angeles Clippers, because Kawhi Leonard is ahead of schedule and in his rehab from his torn ACL, and he amped his workload as of this recent past week and looks stronger and stronger. Now, if Kawhi Leonard returns, what are the chances that you give the Clippers to make the NBA Finals and come out of the Western Conference?
That's tough. I don't give them too much of a chance. And I'm a big Clippers fan. I'm a big Paul George fan. But I think when you look at this team, it's just too many injuries right now. Paul George has been out. Marcus Morris has been in and out of the lineup. Luke Kennard has been in and out of the lineup. The only consistents have been Reggie Jackson and Bledsoe. The Serge Ibaka, he's still trying to find his way. This team has just been, they're sitting at 19 and 20 right now. They're ninth seed, I believe, or just hovering in that play-in. I think if they can make a run, right, to about a fifth seed, maybe a fourth seed, then Kawhi can maybe look at it and be like, all right, fourth, fifth seed, we can probably beat the fourth seed if I play, and then, we'll have to see the Warriors or the Suns. They probably would much rather see the Suns, I feel like, considering last year how they looked at it. Paul George and them gave them a tough series in 6. Kawhi probably makes 7. They probably want to see the Suns more. But even now, I don't think Kawhi's scared of either the Suns or the Warriors. I think he'll play regardless. But I think it really just depends on how the Clippers, finish this stretch run. Because the Clippers are a really good team. I think if they're healthy, they're one of the best teams in the West. They're a top 3 team in the West for me. If they are healthy, if Kawhi and Paul George are healthy, because they have a solid group of guys next to Kawhi and Paul George. They have the proper spacing. They have defense. They have rebounding. They can go small. They can go big. So they're a pretty good group of guys. It's just health. And I think if, like I said, if they make a strong run down this and they get 4th or 5th, Kawhi should play. But if they're still hovering in the 6, 7 or the playing range, I feel like just let Paul George and this group ride it out. If they can make a Cinderella run, maybe. But I think Kawhi should just, because, Kawhi should just rest up this year, get ready for next year, because they're both locked up for this year and next year. So I don't see any rush. Reggie Jackson's locked up. Marcus Morris is locked up. They're probably not going to bring Serge back. You see some nice things from Brandon Boston Jr. He's been really good for them. So I think at that point, you just can rest up this year and get ready for a run next year.
I kind of disagree. I feel as if you traded all these draft picks away for Paul George. You made that big splash move because Kawhi wanted to come to LA. He wanted to make LA his town. And you bring in Paul George, you trade these plethora of picks away to OKC. But why, when Kawhi seems to be ahead of schedule, and we saw the type of basketball that the Clippers can play, even without Kawhi Leonard in the playoffs against the Suns, against the Utah Jazz, who right now we're looking at 2 of the 3 best teams in the Western Conference. And they beat the Utah Jazz and they gave the Suns a hell of a series. Personally, if Kawhi's ready to go and he says, I'm 100%, I'm not, there's no leash on my limits. And when I'm on the court, and Paul George is healthy, if he's coming back from his injury and he's the Paul George that we're all expecting him to be, we see what this Clippers team can be when they're at full strength, like you mentioned. Do you look at other teams right now in the Western Conference as it currently stands and say these teams are definitely better than the Clippers? Yes. You look at the Suns, you look at the Warriors, you look at Utah. I understand that discrepancy between them and the Clippers.
Utah?
That being said, of the 3 teams, you're taking Utah or the Clippers right now? You're taking Utah.
Wait,
now.
The Clippers help.
Right,
wait,
okay.
I'm talking.
I thought you meant Clippers help.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No,
sorry.
I'm saying right now it's hard to say. You look at those 3 teams; they're the most dominant right now in the Western Conference. That being said, you bring in a healthy Paul George, you bring in a healthy Kawhi Leonard. This team can compete with any team. Like you mentioned, Kawhi Leonard defensively is the most versatile defender that this league has to offer. Name another. I really couldn't tell you.
Draymond's better. Draymond's better.
Draymond's more versatile than Kawhi Leonard.
Yes.
Drew, let me ask you a question.
And on top of that, he adds 25 points per game. That's what Draymond can.
Looking at Kawhi's history concern, you think it's smart to bring him back in a situation like that if they're not a high seed?
Given what you gave up,
especially if he's locked, if they're both locked up,
given what you put together, given what you gave up, to put this team together, it would be borderline irresponsible for them not to go out and get it while they can. I understand this year is a wash, but even last year, look at the Lakers. LeBron came back 2 games before the playoffs started. AD was not 100%, but these guys
And
said,
do you think that was
we're
smart?
trying to, not necessarily, but regardless of that, you still got to give it a go. We saw that the Lakers still almost took out a team that went to the finals. We saw what the Clippers can do at full strength. We believed, you and I, that if the Clippers were fully healthy, they were going to the finals and could have potentially beat Milwaukee.
Could
Yes,
they
but I was-
beat? Could they beat the Lakers in a playoff series fully healthy?
Right now,
Fully healthy, like Kawhi, PG. Would they beat you guys?
I mean, right now without AD, sure.
No, I'm talking. Well, you guys fully healthy too with AD.
I think I'll take us over anyone, truthfully,
Oh my
but that's
God.
maybe my bias, but I don't really care.
But Drew, listen, but you got to think about it like this too. I think you're forgetting that, like you said, you guys brought AD back, LeBron back. You tried to make a run, obviously, but with the Clippers, I get it. They traded everything. They traded all their picks, but everybody's locked up for the next year. You have to look at the future and think we don't
Then
want
this is another year lost. Do you like
but
that?
you don't want to. But you don't. With Kawhi's injuries concerned, you don't want to put that on his body. You want to. If next year we have him for a full season, I'd rather make that run next year. You know what I'm saying? Because he's already locked up for next year. You feel me?
I agree with what
But
you're
now we're
saying
going
to an
in-
extent, but this season you do know the OKC Thunder, they own the Clippers' first round pick.
There you
You
go.
You are
Playoffs.
going to give OKC a high first round pick if that happens.
That's
Not
what I'm saying. You
necessarily.
want to compete.
Yes.
Because if they get a 6th seed, I would bring Kawhi back. Then that's why I said if they get a 5th or 6th seed, I would bring Kawhi back. But if they get like an 8th, 7th, why go in there in a dogfight with not even 100% Kawhi?
But then again, like we've spoken about, at full strength, without being at full strength, they gave the Suns a hell of a series last year. The Suns are better this year without a doubt. I agree. But now you bring Kawhi back into the mix. You're bringing in a more confident Paul George now.
But this
You're
isn't
telling
a
me
full
that this-
Kawhi though. This is a
But who
Kawhi a
kno-
year
but who-
removed.
But who know? We don't know what month, what time, which game he's going to come back now. It's probably going to be around April, May. That being said, if he has a few games to get his feet underneath him, you're telling me you're still not contemplating?
It depends, bro. Kawhi got hurt against Utah series, and we didn't know he tore his ACL into the finals.
Mm-hmm. It was
So
a
it's
partial tear, which is why I'm a little bit more lenient or more confident to allow him to come back and be.
I'll push
confident in
back
it.
on that a little
Good.
bit because I think the Clippers probably always knew it was that, but they never fully ruled Kawhi out just in case they made the finals. But once the Clippers were out, then they announced that he was never going to come back regardless, but they were always keeping that window open for him if they did in fact make the finals. Would you bring Kawhi back, JC?
This is a tough question. It's a lot of variables involved in it. I kind of agree with River in the sense that if the Clippers can turn their season around and maybe get the 6th to 5th seed and maybe have a per se easier opponent rather than being in the play-in, having to play that and then having to get rewarded with playing either the Warriors, the Suns, it's tough because obviously this team is decimated with injuries, and in some sense I kind of agree with Drew. Like, this is a team that you put all your chips in. First year you kind of blew a 3-1 lead in the bubble to the Denver Nuggets. Next year, you have an injury to Kawhi Leonard. And honestly, I feel bad for Clippers fans because that was probably like in the worst time that injury could have happened, because we've seen with Paul George against the Suns last year, it took them to 6 games. If Paul George hits a couple free throws, that's a series that could go 7. And I'm of the mindset that I think Kawhi Leonard, and when he's healthy and playing, I tweeted it a while ago. A couple people agree with me, a couple people don't. But he's a top 5 player in the NBA. He's to me, he's the best two-way player in basketball. And anytime you can add that to a team, that's only going to propel them to certain heights. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George on the court, that's a championship contending team. And, the injury history with Kawhi Leonard, like it is kind of a little uneasy because we've seen seasons in San Antonio where they forced him to come back and he ended up missing the whole season. and he ended up leaving San Antonio. So the injury history with Kawhi Leonard is definitely scary. But if they could get the 6th to 5th seed, I would like them. I would like them against a series against Dallas. I would like them against a series even against potentially Utah or any other team. I just
Agreed.
don't think. I just think they're obviously susceptible to a healthy Warriors and the Phoenix Suns. But anybody else along below those two, I think the Clippers. I think the Clippers with Kawhi Leonard and everybody healthy can take them. We've seen Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard, when he plays, he's one of the best postseason basketball players of all time. He's had one of the best postseason runs of all time in Toronto. And even last year, in his first year in the Clippers, averaged 30 points per game in the playoffs, turns into this two-way demon. There was series he was battling with Luka when Luka was cooking everybody. You put
Second year.
Kawhi on him. You put the next series when Donovan Mitchell's dropping 40 points, you put Kawhi Leonard on him, essentially becomes neutralized. So I'm with the mindset of River. If they could get anywhere from the 6th to 5th seed, I give it a go. You have to give it a go. You just can't waste a year. But if the Clippers hover around the play-in 6 or the 7th or 8th seed, I don't think it's worth it. I don't.
I mean, last playoffs, Kawhi had 5 30-plus point games out of the 11 games that he played in, and getting him back, it would do wonders for the Clippers. I feel like they're in such a weird position because the championship window is closing. It's closing. I think
You have to make the most
the
of it.
Clippers and the Nets have the same time for a championship window. I think the Nets championship window was really last season. That's when they had their best chance. This year they have a chance, but it's going to be much tougher. Next year, Harden hasn't even signed his extension yet, so he can very well leave.
Kyrie either.
Yeah, Kyrie either. So if they leave now the Nets are really in trouble for the future. With the Clippers, even though they have Kawhi and PG locked up, Paul George is 31. Kawhi is 30 and has already had some pretty significant injuries. And their team is made up of guys that they're good in their role, but they aren't per se game changers. Reggie Jackson is really good, but he has an injury history as well. And he stepped up because of Kawhi's absence. Now you're adding Kawhi. What is that going to do to his game? Because he needs the ball in his hands. So Kawhi coming back is going to neutralize what Reggie Jackson has been doing for the Clippers so far. And they don't have any picks. Like, they don't have any assets to trade for a potential game-changing player. And if they're not good this year, their pick is going to OKC regardless. But if the Clippers aren't good, you're going to basically waste the season not being good and not even get compensated for it. Which is why that I think if Kawhi is able to come back, and I mean, if he's able to come back 2 months before the playoffs or even like a month and a half, then I'm all for it. But if this is a situation where he is ready to come back as soon as the playoffs start, one, I don't think he's going to be ready enough to make a significant difference where he's going to be able to beat a team like Utah or Phoenix or Golden State. He has to have some time to come back from this injury. And that's the same reason why I think the Nuggets shouldn't rush Jamal back. Because if he does come back, Jamal's going to come back as soon as the playoffs start. I still don't have faith in Denver. And I even brought this thought earlier in the season that I think Denver should probably try to tank because you can get a top pick and then next year you'd have Jamal, MPJ, Jokic, and a top prospect. And now you have, plus with Aaron Gordon, and now you have a really nice roster. I think the Clippers are in a tough situation because they kind of have to rush Kawhi out there because this championship window is closing. PG is supposed to come back in 3 to 4 weeks.
Evaluated.
Okay, so that's even worse. The Clippers right now are falling in the standings, and they're the 8th seed currently, 19 and 20, and they don't have PG. They don't have Kawhi. Like, this team is stuck in the middle right now, and there really is no direction for them.
The one thing I'll say about this team, this team is, granted all the injuries. Drew, I don't necessarily all the way disagree with you. I think if they see Dallas again, okay, Kawhi can come back. If they see Denver and nobody's playing, okay, Kawhi can come back. You know what I'm saying? Like, Utah, maybe only because, granted, the Clippers are bad this year in offense, but they're one of the best defensive teams in the league. So they still locked down on, and that's been without their two guys. You know, they still lock in on the defensive end. So I think that series, and like the small ball lineup is always going to hurt Utah. So I think in that series, you know, you can probably weigh in on that. And like Joel said, you know, the picks is tough, but if they can get in the playoffs, it's not going to hurt them as much. You know, a late first round pick isn't going to hurt as much. And then with Paul George and Kawhi there, they're going to be free agents that want to come to the Clippers, you know, want to come and play for them, guys who can, like the Batums of the world, you know, guys like that. So they can always have that in their pocket. But this team is getting old. This team's window is closing. But you have to in a situation like this, you have to be careful because San Antonio messed up. They don't want to make the same mistake San Antonio did and not have, like JC said, because I agree with him. Kawhi is a top 5 player in the NBA, healthy. There's no debate. Kawhi is a top 5 player in the league when he is healthy. He is the best two-way player in the league to me when he's
Giannis.
Healthy.
That's you got like both of you guys said that Giannis doesn't come to mind immediately.
He does
for two-way.
And
two-way,
so
correct.
does Anthony Davis and Giannis come
but
to mind.
Giannis is clean of OD.
But I think
right now
with Kawhi, he can better than both of those guys. He can stop a guy. Like you're not putting Giannis on somebody and saying, okay, I need you to neutralize him for this game. Giannis is more like a rim protector. With
He's
Kawhi,
a safety.
Perimeter. Yeah, like Kawhi, you can really put him on somebody like a Jalen Ramsey, and you'd be like, yo, bro, I need him out for the game. And Kawhi can do that, plus give you 30, efficient 30 on the other end. So for me, like, I think you have to
Darrell Revis.
Darrell Revis, you know what I'm saying? That's Darrell Revis to the league and whatnot. But you
now
have
I'm
to be safe, in my
Diasimo.
opinion. Yo, he was good for like a
One
season.
hit wonder.
What happened to him?
No, he was good on the Raiders. He sucked for the
He
Eagles.
was.
Yeah, he signed him. He was like a 97 overall in Madden, bro. We signed him. And he just fell off. Like I was so mad.
What is his name? Namdi Asamoah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
name
the fake
rings a
dream
bell.
team. We had the fake dream team label. We had Vic, Deshaun Jackson, Jeremy Maclin, LaShawn McCoy, Namdi. We picked mad people up, and we went 4-12.
You don't even know
But
who
y'all
Cortland
were-
Finnegan is.
Come on, bro. He's a
The
corner.
corner.
Yeah, come on. He got punched
Didn't
in the
him
face.
and I was gonna say Andre Johnson
Yeah.
popped him.
Cortland Finnegan. I was actually thinking while you were talking, I was thinking about another player that potentially could be in the buyout market or get traded, and he's actually he'd be a significant piece for a championship contending team, and that's Eric Gordon. Like I think he can still give a team a lot of value. He's a really great defender. He can create his own shot. He can spot up. He can shoot. He's somebody to look out for.